I know very little about Malaysia, despite being born and raised in this country. My name is Yoke. Although I've traveled extensively across Malaysia, my first time setting foot in Taiping was April 2022. That's when I learned about Maxwell's Hill, a small granite mountain sitting within the Narrators Hills Forest Reserve, which covers a large area of forested highlands. Being one of the oldest hill stations raised by the British in the 1880s, it has now become a recreational spot for local hikers and nature lovers. Maxwell's Hill is also an important water catchment area, which nourishes the Taiping people with its clean water. The hill's stretch of pristine forest is home to an immense biodiversity of flora and fauna. When I was researching the floral species that can be found on Maxwell's, I discovered this forest herb called Impatiens curtisii, which belongs to the balsam family. It is an endemic species which can be found nowhere else but only on Maxwell's Hill, at altitudes of 900 to 1,200 meters above sea level. The name Impatiens is derived from the seed's impatience to burst forth upon the world. The species name of this plant commemorates Charles Curtis, the first person to collect this plant. He was a devoted botanist and also the first curator of Penang Botanic Gardens. In December 2022, I went up to the hills with my other teammates to look for this endemic plant. On the first day of our search, we found a number of flowers with similar color and physical appearance to Impatiens curtisii. However, they were not what I was searching for. After spending hours searching for the plant, the weather turned bad, and we called it a day with a slight disappointment. The next morning, we met Mr. Guna, a local nature guide who grew up on Maxwell's Hill. I asked him about Impatiens curtisii, and he led me to where exactly the plant is. This dainty flower is about 4 centimeters. It can be distinguished from other impatient species by its long petiole, which reaches up to 8 centimeters. The leaves have rough hairs on the surface. The seed pod is a fleshy capsule swollen in the center with many flat seeds. The stems are erect and they can reach from 10 to 40 centimeters tall. This elongated part at the back of the flower is called the spur, which produces nectar. This might indicate only animals with specific adaptations are able to feed on the nectar and help to pollinate the plants. As we walked further along the stretch, we saw more of them. I was eager to find out more about this forest herb, but apart from its physical appearance, there's just too little information about this unique species. As I talked to people who have been to Maxwell's Hill to gather more information about this plant, I got to know Dr. Neil and his family, who is known as one of the most frequent visitors to the hills. Dr. Neil started birdwatching in the 60s, and at that time, there were very few field guides of birds which he can refer to. That's when he started to document Malaysia's bird life through painting realistic pictures of the birds he encountered.
We started going there in 1992.
1992. The reason why we went to Maxwell Hill so many times was because we wanted to bring the children out, to expose them to nature, to let the children enjoy nature. Thankfully, all three of our children love nature.
Up in Bukit Larut there, over 1,000 meters above sea level, we have the sub-montane birds. A lot of plants provide food for the birds, especially like the sunbird. They'll need nectar from certain flowering plants. From the first trip itself we have seen, because it's quite common there, the habitat will be a very delicate, very sensitive place to sustain these endemic species. So any tip of the balance in the equilibrium in nature, it might upset the whole environment. You may lose the species completely, and this will be irreplaceable. That's what we are worried about. And Bukit Larut is not a very large area; it's a relatively small area. It's surrounded all by cultivation and towns and etc. already. So we are worried that one day all these may disappear.
Yes, Impatiens curtisii only grows within a limited range on Maxwell's Hill, which indicates its reliance on the specific conditions in their habitat. One of it could be the temperature and humidity of its surroundings. So, what would happen to this plant if the temperature of its surroundings changes? I had the chance to talk to Dr. Christine Fletcher. She is a trained ecologist who has extensive experience in conducting research in wildlife ecology and forestry.
In general, plants in tropical countries are expected to be more sensitive to climate change. Why? Because they are not used to the changes in temperatures and rain. Unlike plants in temperate countries, they have gone through the 4 seasons. They have gone through seasons where it's really cold, when it's really dry. So they are able to adapt. Unlike our tropical plants, they're so used to being in this comfortable environment that once, a shift of 1 degree temperature is just going to throw it off the charts. So that's why we worry about tropical countries. Theoretically, if it is being dispersed or pollinated by an insect or particular bird species, and this insect or bird species is highly affected because of climate change, or they move away because of the rising temperatures, then this plant will not have any disperser or pollinator, and then the population will die. So it really depends on the physiology of the plants, and that's what makes it also complicated and intricate. When we talk about the impacts of climate change, it's not something very direct. There's so many factors that we have to look into. The danger of this is that the less we know, the more dangerous and more alarming it is for us, isn't it?
Dr. Christine's words reminded me of the plants that can be commonly seen on Maxwell's Hill. Ferns. Ferns' existence is often overlooked, but they are actually an important food source and shelter for many animals. More than a decade ago, a group of botanical experts from FRIM were trying to locate this tiny fern called Grammatis crispetula, which was also a species endemic to Maxwell's. However, the fern was said to have disappeared from its only locality on the hill. Experts had observed that the habitat of this fern was polluted and severely degraded over the years, and it was unknown whether this endemic species can be found again. The ecosystem on Maxwell's Hill is a fragile balance. All life on the hills are interconnected. Everything we see exists together. There could be numerous factors that lead to the unknown losses of the endemic plants. And these unknowns could pose a detrimental impact on the overall ecosystem of the hill. For now, the Impatiens curtisii can still be seen thriving on the hills. But for how much longer will they be part of life on Maxwell's Hill?